Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to the fourth and final part of my team building guide in Pokemon. Today's last episode is going to be entirely based upon discussing team synergy and how the sum of all the members of the team will be able to equal to something much greater than the individual usefulness of one particular member. So with that, let's get started by taking a look at a few characteristics that I think are pretty important when trying to figure out team synergy for your own teams and for my team as well. So the first thing that I'm going to be talking about here is something that I've been basically mentioning the entire series, which is having resistances that cover your weaknesses. It is so important that you are able to switch out to another Pokemon when you are put into a bad situation and be able to regain the advantage that you had in the battle just because of the typing of the Pokemon on your team. It's something that will save you a lot of trouble in battles and one of the easiest things to figure out, as well as one of the most important to me. Another really important thing for team synergy is being able to wear down walls so that your offense can sweep. Because obviously your opponent's walls are going to be wanting to take the hits from your offense. So if you have a pretty solid way of wearing them down for your offensive Pokemon to take them out really easily, you're basically building upon your team synergy there as well. And this can be done through being able to set up a lot of entry hazards, such as like spikes and stealth rocks, so that every time your opponent switches in, they're going to be losing a ton of health, or basically having status inflicting moves like toxic on your opponent's walls so that they can't really wall as long because they will obviously die eventually to these status moves. So those are just a couple of things that'll help wear down your opponent's walls so that your offense will be able to basically take control of the match once they are weaker. Another thing that's really important is being able to take out threats that pose problems for other members. For example, if your team has a weakness to flying type attacks, it's really important that you have maybe a really fast or a really powerful ice type or electric type or rock type or any of those kind of types that would be able to hit a Pokemon on your opponent's team for super effective damage so that it will no longer pose a threat to another member of your team. Similarly, if you have, say, maybe a mono attacking Pokemon that's like boosting or something like that, it's really important that you maybe can take out a opponent's member that would be resisting that one type of attack that you're using so that you're able to sweep a lot easier with that Pokemon. Another thing that'll help out your team a lot is having an answer for stat boosters, and this could actually be done simply in having a Pokemon with the ability Unaware, but as long as you have something, say like a Roar move or a Dragon Tail move, or just something that's faster in general than the Pokemon that is stat boosting, you should be able to pretty much cover this pretty easily. Obviously, when something is stat boosting, it's going to be able to take out a few members of your team pretty quickly if it's accumulating offensive stats very fast. So if you have something that can just get rid of that Pokemon pretty easily, then you'll save a couple of your team members' lives by not having them have to take a huge hit from this Pokemon. Um, Another thing that's really useful is being able to remove entry hazards for teammates weak to them. Obviously, I'm mainly referring to Stealth Rock because there are a ton of Pokemon weak to that, because any Pokemon with a rock weakness will be weak to Stealth Rock. So being able to remove entry hazards is really nice. Having a Rapid Spinner is very useful on a team that has a rock weakness. Another thing is also being able to heal off status and recover other members' health. This is something I talked a little bit about in the defensive video. Having access to Heal Bell and things like that to recover off status, or also being able to Wish Pass to other things, is really useful to keep your team healthy and also get rid of potential like a burn status on an offensive Pokemon on your team or a physically offensive Pokemon so that it is still able to deal a ton of damage once you get rid of that burn. And then the last thing that is very important to kind of think about, but it's not really something you're going to notice right away on your team unless you're really thinking about it, is having a backup plan if something goes wrong. So if you have a dedicated physical wall and it dies really early on in the match, it's really important that you kind of think about what else on your team could potentially take a physical hit if it needs to, even though it's not necessarily intended to do so. And the same thing goes for like a special attack or a special wall, or if your offense dies pretty easy, you need to have a backup plan for maybe your walls to be able to deal a ton of damage or be able to toxic stall or something like that if your offense is going down pretty quickly. So it's always good to have a secondary option if something on your team that is your dedicated attacker or dedicated wall goes down pretty early in the match, because you can never predict that kind of stuff. So with that, let me just basically talk for a couple minutes about my team and how I think it supports each other pretty well. So I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly, and I know that I'm not going to be able to cover everything and how this team supports itself, so just bear with me there. And if you think of some other ideas, just post them in the comments. But anyways, Wormadam Sandy helps out my team significantly. And to describe how it works with each individual member, it works really well with Licky Licky, because Licky Licky is my special wall, and the only thing it's weak to is fighting moves, which Wormadam Sandy resists. Similarly, it works together with Luminion, because Luminion is weak to electric moves, which Wormadam Sandy is immune to. It helps out Raichu because it provides a secondary option for taking electric type moves. Obviously, hence Raichu has the lightning round ability, but if Raichu goes down early in the match, I still have a immunity to electric moves, which is really nice. As far as Skuntank is concerned, and also with Raichu, since Wormadam Sandy is a ground type, it has access to stab ground attacks, which often is paired with rock on or for typing, so I'm able to actually do some pretty good damage to the ground rock types that would occasionally threaten out Skuntank and Raichu. And also, if I can kill those pretty early on, Raichu is pretty much able to Volt Switch on anything on the team. And similarly, it works very well with Duosion for purposes of being able to wear down walls, set up Stealth Rocks so that Duosion has an easier time sweeping later in the battle, and also having access to Sucker Punch to take out potential threats that would be fast and powerful and threaten Duosion out and basically make it so that it is unable to sweep. As for Licky Licky, it supports my entire team by being able to take pretty much any special attack. Also, it has access to Toxic, which when paired with Luminion works extremely well because Luminion, the one that I use at least, has Protect. So if I'm able to Toxic something, I do have a secondary Pokemon to Toxic Stall on my team, which would be Luminion. Also, it does have access to Wish, so it's able to heal up HP from my entire team. As for Luminion, it pairs extremely well with Wormadam Sandy. It absorbs any water move directed at it because of Storm Drain. It also resists the fighting and the fire moves that, sorry, not the fire and ice moves that Wormadam Sandy is weak to. So those two pair together extremely well. Similarly, it helps Licky Licky out a lot because having access to Scald, it can burn something, thus allowing Licky Licky to also potentially stall it out because of access to Wish and Protect. It works very well with Raichu because having a super effective move to ground types, it's able to take them out pretty early. Excuse me, if I'm able to, meaning that Raichu will then be able to Volt Switch on anything. Similarly, Skuntank has also a weakness to ground types, so Luminion obviously is really good because it can hit them for super effective damage. And lastly, with Duosion, if Luminion does get a burn on something, that makes Duosion's ability to set up that much easier because it'll now not have to worry so much about a physical attacker, preventing it from boosting and then recovering off the health. As far as Raichu is concerned, it is basically the go-to Pokemon on this team when it comes to taking things out. It's the fastest thing on this team. It's Choice Scarfed. It's going to be outspeeding pretty much everything. So it does just support it in general through its offense. One particular way that it actually helps out Wormadam Sandy and my team in general is I don't technically have a real good Pokemon to take flying type moves, but since Raichu is faster than everything that would be a flying type, at least that isn't Choice Scarfed, Raichu should be able to deal with those flying Pokemon very easily. Also, once I do get rid of maybe ground types or electric resists or something like that, Raichu can pretty much Volt Switch pretty freely, switching out to any Pokemon on this team to get an advantage in battle. It also works very well as a partner to Luminion because it can absorb the electric moves that Luminion would be potentially hit by, thus boosting its attack and increasing its sweeping power, which is really nice. And obviously, as Raichu is annoying throughout the battle, Volt Switching around and doing everything, it'll help wear down the physical walls because obviously it's a special attacker for Skuntank to maybe take him out or for Duosion to just clean up later in battle. As for Skuntank, I do have a bit of a weakness to ghost moves on this team, or ghost types, namely Haunter or Banette or something like that, because Licky Licky can actually touch Haunter with, actually it just can't because it's immune to everything that Licky Licky packs. So having Skuntank around to Pursuit Trap them or Sucker Punch them for priority purposes is really nice because Skuntank is able to take out any ghost type that would really threaten my team just because of its typing. It also is able to absorb Toxic Spikes, which is very useful for my team, so that I don't have to worry so much about everything being poisoned and taking damage every turn. And it's also just really nice to have a Pokemon with a really solid stab priority move to take out any threats that may be already weakened by the other members and get them out of the way pretty early on. And lastly, Duosion is just the final Pokemon on this team that is just meant to clean up after all of this has transpired. It functions, as I said before, as a fourth wall in case Wormadam Sandy goes down. I do have a secondary resist to fighting type moves in the form of Duosion, which is really nice, and I could actually potentially even set up on fighting types just for that reason. It is immune to toxic spikes in general, so if Skuntank goes down early in the match and my opponent sets them up, Duosion can still set up even though there are toxic spikes on the field because of the Magic Guard ability. And overall, it just is a really solid Pokemon. If I finally am able to set up with it, your team is pretty much done. That's just how it works. That's what Duosion does, so that's really cool. And the entire team is able to support it and allow it to do that very effectively. So I guess the last thing to do now is to talk a little bit about the overall resistances and weaknesses of my team once I have all of them together on this team building site. So as you can see here, the only thing on my team that has a dual weakness is a weakness to ground Pokemon caused by Raichu and Skuntank, which I talked a little bit about in the previous episode. And then the only thing that I have a weakness to that isn't resisted is to bug moves. But again, if you kind of think about the tier, and NU, there really aren't a lot of threatening bug types. So it's not really that big of a deal, to me at least. And for the most part, most bug Pokemon aren't very powerful with the exception of Armaldo. So that's just something to point out in general, though I would like to have had a resistance to that anyway. But as you can see, there are only 4 types that I don't resist, which are Normal, Rock, Bug, and Dragon. So that's pretty dang good. There's really nothing bad I could ever say about that because of that. I have 5 immunities on this team through Skuntank, Raichu, Licky, Lumineon, and Wormadam. All of them have some type of immunity, which is really awesome. And that's very important to me. I think that was one of the main reasons of how this team came to be, because I just wanted to find a team with a lot of immunities, which is 5, and that's pretty darn good. And also, like I said, pretty much everything can have an answer to, or I pretty much have an answer to everything on this team. And it's really designed to be a threat to a lot of common other threats in NU. So that's part of the reason why I built it and why I think it's really great. But anyways, I basically am wishing you all luck in figuring out your own teams. Thank you for sitting with me throughout this entire series. I know it's pretty long. Each episode is about like 10 minutes, so that can get a little frustrating after a while, but I thank you all for watching this series. I hope you learned something. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope that it improved your team building abilities. But I guess the only thing left to do now with this team would be to show you how it works, right? So you're going to see that coming up in a couple days, which I'm very excited about. I won't really say any more on that because it's kind of a surprise, but it's not really a surprise because it's something that I've been talking about for a little while. But you'll see. So anyway, that is it for this video, everyone. Thank you for watching this series. I hope you learned something. Good luck with your own team building. Take care as always, and goodbye.